You're on the Bible Forum. I'm Warren Sprouse. We're here every Sunday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern. We have a chat room. Folks are in there busy talking to themselves and each other. And we'd love for you to join us. If you'd like to be on the mailing list, just email thebibleforum@gmail.com. We're glad to put you on. One email a week. Give you the rundown. That's all we do. I want to talk to you a little bit about America's destiny. The average American has no idea what's going on. We tend to live in yesterday. Whatever has happened so far is our context. And we expect that the future is going to just work out. It may be some bumpy roads, but in the long run, it's all going to work out fairly well. And so while we're busy taking out the trash of life, there are forces at work for the last 100 years or more, seriously working to destroy our way of life. One major illustration is our national debt, currently over $27 trillion. Our tax income, $3 trillion a year. Now, you try that on a $40,000 a year salary to carry a $350,000 debt. You're never going to get rid of it. And how long will it be before you actually go bankrupt? Well, governments don't necessarily go bankrupt because they print the money, which they will, and which I believe they are. When the government starts printing large amounts of money, prices go up. Have you seen prices go up lately? I have. Well, how high will they go? Well, the prices might actually double. It won't happen all at once. It won't happen with any fanfare, but prices will increase. And a few months later, they will increase again. And they will slowly increase. That's how you'll know it's happening. Right now, you owe $81,899. That's the personal debt, per citizen debt. If you're a taxpayer, you owe $216,772, and it's growing. Does anybody care? In Washington, there's people on both sides of it, but they're not hesitant to give permission to spend more money. The argument now between the president and the House of Representatives is how much, not whether we should or not. We have a billionaire president who assures us all this is going to be resolved if you give him one more term. That the debt his administration accrued was necessary, out of his control, to fix the problems of the former administration, to beat back the coronavirus fallout. First time in American history that the government has gotten involved this heavily over a virus. And a large percentage of the news about the virus has been manufactured out of fear. Now, the truth is, there can be a return to freedom as long as we are dependent upon largesse from the state. If you're dependent on the state, you have given up your freedoms. You can't have one without the other. And if you want your freedoms, you've got to take power away from the state. It doesn't look like that's the direction we're going. It's not a philosophical concept, it's a reality. Whenever a people have been heavily dependent on the state in one way or another, they become accustomed to receiving largesse at the expense of others. Such a group is unlikely in the extreme to either produce or elect a Washington or a Jefferson. They almost always choose instead to fall behind someone who promises largesse from the state. Look at the voting in our country. Look at the way Congress moves or the presidency. And over time, we have very conservative presidents, and they'll serve 4 or 8 years. And right behind them will come a liberal. Not an exhaustingly liberal, but certainly more liberal than the other. People are tired of being responsible and they just want to relax and go. And after they get 8 or 12 years under their belt, they go back to the conservative again. We see that in countries around the world. Uh, this is just human nature. The economic system is a house of cards, and it gets shakier every day. We owe far more than we're worth right now. The government has become mired in progress numbing fascism ruling through fear and suppression of the opposition, and increasingly collectivist. A collectivist system is the system of ownership and control of the means of production and distribution by the people collectively under the supervision of a government. The government is aggressively creating the world's most organized police state. The majority of the population have become wasteful, spendthrift consumers who apathetically hope their government will somehow solve their problems. The media consistently misrepresents international events, prodding the citizenry into accepting that the ongoing invasion of multiple other countries is essential, at least not a problem. The most popular candidates for president, both parties, are overtly egotistical men who preach rhetoric rather than real solution. When was the last time you heard either one give you steps as to what they're going to do in order to get our house in order and provide a safe environment in which to live and work? They're simply throwing stones at one another. Over here, the house is on fire. One's a career politician who's ridden the coattails of others for the last 40 or 50 years. The other is a successful, if not controversial, businessman who knows how people think, knows how businesses work, and has the personality of a carnival pitchman. Today in America, less than 2% of Americans are involved in agriculture. A mere 9% are actually employed in the production of goods. They are rarely directly involved in their own physical protection. Most, if not all, combat is overseas and fought by defense contractors or those who voluntarily serve the military. Most Americans receive benefits of one type or another from their government. Most recipients regard these benefits as essential and could not get by without them. Most Americans receive their opinions from the media, the mainstream media, the majority of it being guided in what majority of people are being guided in what to believe and how to resolve and how to evaluate what you just saw. You didn't really see what you saw. I'll tell you what you saw. And they're guided because they're not being given all the news. I watch NBC at night at 6:30. I also scan the internet for news. It is absolutely amazing what NBC does not tell us, or how it skews reality. And they're not alone. The other mainstream news outlets are doing the same thing. Subtle for the most part, but obvious to anyone who's paying attention. For example, you're not going to get news after 8 a.m. on a public channel during the week. The rest of the day, the mainstream culture is on display. A culture that's vulgar, decidedly liberal, not connected to constructive reality, and emotion driven. Fun to watch, entertaining, maybe instructive to both young minds and those who are easily led into the vulgarities and godlessnesses of mainstream culture. But that's about all. People outside this culture, both here and abroad, see this sort of thing and shake their heads. That otherwise intelligent people can be so easily deceived, that our young adult population is so confused about reality, that our children are so alone. Both parents working, cell phones being their only friends, music and videos crafting their worldview, warping them. And that doesn't even count our educational system, which has, since the 1940s, worked diligently to warp young minds into the mold they have created. A mold that does not allow God, nor constructive social structures, nor the biblical basis of our Constitution to even be considered. In science class, you have evolution. In social studies, you have collectivism. In health class, you get abortion or detailed descriptions of heterosexual sex. And throughout the day, all kinds of junk. It's obvious to those outside the United States who can only shake their heads at the misinformation being broadcast by U.S. media and the wholesale acceptance of this alternative reality by so many Americans. Which mainstream news outlet covers all the news? None of them. If it's something that doesn't fit their worldview, it doesn't get airtime. Positive news doesn't sell like the junk. Conservative opinion, in their view, is destructive. And it is destructive to their model. But what does all that mean for the future, for us as Americans, if they were to become determined enough to either remove their entire government or for some states to secede? Would there be a revolution? There have been many revolutions in the history of the world, both peaceful and otherwise. In the case of the American Revolution of 1776, the colonists themselves were largely self-contained as a people and possessed the drive to succeed as a productive country. They saw the threat. Of course, it was overtly obvious. Redcoats were in their front yard. But this has rarely been true in history. Whenever a people have been heavily dependent on the state in one way or another, they become accustomed to receiving largesse at the expense of others. Such a group is unlikely in the extreme to either produce or elect a Washington or a Jefferson. They almost always choose instead to fall in behind someone who promises largesse from the state. Today in America, that's generally a Democrat candidate. But as time rolls along, what was liberal has become middle of the road, and what was conservative has become radical. The future? The pattern will continue. It will continue until there is no United States of America. Only another socialist country headed toward a dictatorship. It's what human beings do, have always done. My values are rooted in the 1940s and 1950s when I was in school. Today, those values are scorned, mocked, derided. However, it was not my generation that got hooked on drugs and sex. It was not my generation that marched in the streets against our military, that rioted at political conventions, that divorced in ever increasingly large numbers, that evolved from birth control pills to abortion on demand, that embraced hard rock, X-rated movies, and virtual nudity. All things which have found a home in the American culture. So much so that they are not considered outrageous, but normal. And now, I'm the outrageous one. How about you?